Hello, everyone. I'm Suman, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have or any worries that you might have about COVID 19. My husband and me were both diagnosed and tested positive with the coronavirus, and yeah, we're both here and happy to talk about our experience. See if anyone's on live. Hi, Rohit. Well, my husband was quite sick with flu-like symptoms. So he had a fever, cough, and he had all the symptoms that we read about and we've seen about on TV. And so we went to a clinic to get himself tested, and the doctors then actually performed the COVID test. And because I was with him and had been exposed to him, I was tested as well, even though at that time I had no symptoms, and I still don't exhibit any symptoms at all. So he was the one that the focus was on, and we did the test, and but then we both got our results saying that we were positive. I think the way it goes is that there's no real pattern. Hi, Saikat. I'm still in quarantine, yes. It's the last few days left for me. And I've done I need two negative tests, so I'm just waiting on my last result. Um, Fingers crossed that that'll be negative as well. I've just had one negative test, and I'm hoping that the next one will be negative, and then I could be out of quarantine. I think we're all in some kind of quarantine at home, but I'm in isolation at the moment, so I'm looking forward to joining my family soon. Hi, Shane. I've never really done this before, so I apologize if we're all coming across a bit disjointed, but I'm happy to chat, and I'm thankful to Aster volunteers for giving us this platform. So we're happy to educate anybody. Thank you, Saikat. Yeah, thanks. Luck's an important thing, I think, at the moment to keep positive is really important. Yeah. Hi, Kavita. Rajnikant, hi. What medicine did you take for the cure? Well, I'm sure we all know that there is no cure yet. They're still working on a vaccine. So for me, there was nothing that I could take really. The what was recommended is basically just to practice good hygiene, wash your hands, and sterilize your all your surroundings. So we use a lot of the hand sanitizers, and to keep clean. There's no medication really, but it's unless you're suffering from other symptoms like the fever, the cough, that's what they then end up treating you. And because it's a virus, so they really can't give you any medication, but it's really about making sure that you got some supplements and take care of your immunity. But Shane's coming on a little bit later, and he was in hospital actually and was battling a bad cough and pneumonia. So I'm sure he can tell you more about what medications he had. But for me, there was no real medication as such. Um, this one you'd be thankful for failing. Yeah, exactly. I'd be quite happy to get a negative for once. Negative has never been so positive, is what we were saying. Thanks, Yamini. Poonam, I didn't have any symptoms. I still don't have any symptoms as what they are looking for. I think the only thing that I could put my finger on is I lost my sense of smell. I only noticed that later once somebody mentioned saying, do you have this symptom? And I would say that that's the only thing which is now coming back, thankfully, is I got my sense of smell back, and I'm slowly getting my sense of taste. That's the only thing that I would say was a symptom. Hi, Amit. Does warm water steam work during the initial stages, as they say? Um, there is no, I don't think, a scientific proof for that, because our body temperatures are way higher than the water that we drink. And if the virus is in our bodies, then obviously, they can handle that. But, and I think it's it's like boiling water that kills it, but I don't think we'd be drinking that. I would, from what I was listening to other doctors as well, is they insist that the soap that you use is what breaks down the fatty ring around the virus, and that's proven to actually render it ineffective or useless or kills it. Um, I didn't do any steam, and I didn't drink a lot of hot water. I did drink warm water with turmeric and lemon and honey, which it's just for me, and I felt like the turmeric water would help my immunity and my body, and more for that, not really because it was going to kill anything. Did you get scared the first time you realized that your husband and you are at risk? How did you cope with the panic? And Yamini, I've got a similar question. How did we handle it emotionally? I think what is, it's a big worry, because when you hear the word coronavirus, and the media and everything have obviously, it just seems like such a big deal, and it seems like like really bad news, which is, for me, it was a bit of a shock that I think I was more prepared for Shane because he's had all the symptoms, but for me, I didn't have any of the symptoms. So for me, I really didn't know how to feel. Once I was told I was positive, I wasn't sure how I'm supposed to react. And because I felt really healthy in myself, I still do. I've got no symptoms. So I think the worry and the panic is because of everything that we hear on the news, and also because we don't know enough about it. So it's still quite new. People are still trying to find a vaccine. They're still trying to collate a lot of data. So I think the unknown is what scares a lot of people. How did I keep myself mentally strong? That's a good question. I'm actually quite a positive person, but I just think that it's really important to. I kind of had to change the way I looked at it. When people were calling me to kind of get reassurance for themselves, I felt like I had to really kind of change the words that I was using. So instead of calling it self-isolation, I didn't want to scare people or, for them to worry anymore. So I think it was more like changing the language to be, I'm socially connected. So I'm able to still talk to everybody via, technology and on the phone. Yes, I'm not physically there, but, we're all cut off in that sense, but we can be socially connected. I made sure that I was able to still have all my friends and family be in touch. So, there were good positive vibes. People were rooting for us, people were praying for us. And it's really important also then, to distract yourself in a good way. So I used the time that I had alone, and I'm a mom of three. Having that time for yourself is really rare. So I must say that I kind of tried to do a little bit of the things that I don't normally get to do. So I watched some movies and tried to make the best of it. Was I in home quarantine, or did I need to go to the hospital? I was in home quarantine, but I did go to the hospital to get my final tests, which is why I'm in quarantine again for a few more days. I think the hospital also needed to do all their checks and check my chest. They did some chest x-rays. They wanted to do a blood test, check my ECG, just to make sure that, for sure that all of these things were fine before they gave me the full all clear. And so that was really important. I think it's when you're at home on your own, and I would suggest this to anybody, is really try and look after your mental health. What I was doing as well is try and get a little bit of exercise, half an hour of stretching. There's so much on YouTube, and I found that there was all these resources that I didn't know existed. So you're able to access some yoga, you're able to do some Pilates, some stretching, and that really was good. And also I've kind of made my room quite relaxing. So, pulled out the candles, kind of get yourself into a bit of a place that you want to be in, that you would like to be in, and that is a conducive to, relaxing. And also, like, I think clutter and a mess makes you kind of not be able to relax. So use it to like tidy up the space that I was in and make the most of it, really. Did I feel more comfortable, Payal, fighting Corona with my husband? Was it easier emotionally? Because both of us were so different, it was quite emotionally taxing on me because I was worrying about him. He was in hospital. We were getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of messages from worried people, constantly asking for an update, constantly asking me, how's he doing? So I spent a lot of time reassuring everybody else, but I really couldn't take that for myself. It was very hard because when people are asking me to feel better and get better, it really was not something I could relate to. It was not something that I was able to say, oh yeah, thanks, I'll get better. But because I didn't feel unwell, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to explain it. What did I do to cope with the loneliness? Well, I must say, for me, it all just happened so quickly, and Shane was in hospital for about 8 days. I really didn't have much time, because I guess there's so much, because we put it on social media, his experience, it just went viral. And that way a lot of people who normally wouldn't have been in touch got in touch with us because they were really concerned. They were really wanted to make sure we were okay. And they wanted to get some answers for themselves and to feel better for themselves. And what I ended up doing was I spent hours and hours and hours. I would say I was about 10 hours a day on my phone, answering questions, speaking to people. So I didn't have time to be lonely. I was worrying about the kids outside, what they'd eaten, what, my sister was able to cook, or there was groceries needed. So I guess, your mind is going 100 miles an hour in our case, that was. But I guess for somebody else who feels alone, I think it's really important to use this time to connect to other people. So now you're home, get in touch, use Zoom or House Party or any of the apps that are available. Connect to your family, check on your family, check on people that you normally wouldn't check on. So, you can use this time to socially connect, I feel. And that always lifts your spirits up. It makes you feel better as well. and find out, if there's something that you want to do. I think, we don't always need to fill all our time with something. It's always nice to also relax and, have time to have a nap. We're always complaining about how busy our lives are, and I think it's really good to slow down, and really look after yourself. So if you want to watch that movie, go ahead, catch up on all the things that you've wanted to do, books you've not had a chance to read. That would be my advice. How were the medical support available to COVID patients and their families? And Binoy asks if I'm happy with the Dubai medical system. I'm absolutely grateful to the Dubai medical system. From the minute that we have, I would say, started on this journey, we have been really quite supported. I have full faith. Shane was taken to a really good hospital. We have access to a bed. We have access to, all the precautions. I know that when we watch the news, we see other countries that are really buckling down under the weight of, the stress of the cases against their medical system. And I think in Dubai has coped really, really well. They've done some amazing measures to protect everybody, to safeguard everybody. With the massive lockdown, they've cleaned the streets. They've really putting the message out. We're aware of the seriousness of it. They make sure that they use every available means to communicate with us, right from our phones, with the warning that there's a curfew at night, to stay home. There are apps now to tell us that, the reasons why to stay home. And like what Aster Volunteers is doing, they're also reaching out through their community to help people cope with this, not just medically. I think it's really important emotionally as well, to give people some tools. I believe they're doing some classes to help people, learn a new skill, try something new. So this is something that you could do. How did your children deal with both of you falling ill? It's a very personal thing that we did for our kids. We have almost 10-year-old triplets. So they're not babies, they're not very young. We can't just tell them we're going away. But they did see their dad quite sick in terms of the fever and the shivering and the cold. So they knew that he was in hospital for that. But we both chose not to tell them that we were COVID positive. The reason being that I was in isolation, even though I was at home. I didn't have access to them, and I didn't want to leave them emotionally kind of on their own with access to an iPad and the net like they do, and just say to them that, sorry, I'm going to be in isolation there and I'm positive for coronavirus, and just leave them. Because as us, they also know, I think, only the bad things that happen. They don't know that people can recover. They don't know that it's very treatable. They don't know that it's not something that affects you as badly if your health is all right or your immunity is okay. That most people will get it and they don't know about it. All they see is bodies and ventilators and overcrowded hospitals. So we chose not to tell them the extent of it. I just said I have to be in quarantine because I was exposed to daddy and I didn't want to give them any germs of the flu. And they had school, so they were busy, and we just left it at that. We didn't want to scare them more. Most of the motivational speakers say to look inwards, introspect. No, I found I made a garbage, so started looking outside instead. I'm happier with the result. Not to be frivolous, but any recommendation on what to watch on Netflix? I don't know what you're into. I love cooking shows, and so I've caught up on that. I was watching. I'm so ashamed to even tell you of the trash that I was watching. I wanted something very light, so I watched The Tiger King. I don't recommend it, to be honest. It's not great. It's not mentally stimulating. But I've heard of a few good Netflix shows. Made in Heaven, and there was another one, Four Shots, Please. I've not watched it yet, but I've got to get to watch it. I've got a list of things to go through. How did the family cope with the stress? My mom and dad are in India, in Bangalore. My sister lives with us, so they coped with the stress by really just looking to us to ask me how am I feeling. I knew that if I said to them that I'm fine and I didn't have any symptoms, then it alleviated that stress for them, because not a lot of people know anybody who actually has it. So they were looking to us for a lot of answers, but it was a very stressful time, I must say. How did you conjure the courage to confront this illness? Are you a spiritual person, Paul? Yes, I am very spiritual. I have a faith. I'm Christian, and I do say that hugely played a part in me being calm. I'm not somebody who gets afraid of something like this. I must admit, it was scary. I did have moments of being quite paralyzed with fear of what next, what's going to happen. But being somebody who prays and believes in the power of prayer, everybody connected with me. I do remember that there was a lot of people who messaged me saying, we're holding you up in prayer, we are thinking of you, we're praying for you. And that is huge. That is, I think doctors and medicine and science comes to a certain point, and then after that you really need to lean on your spirituality and also believe that God is in control. I kept saying that to myself all the time. God is in control, and he's working on getting us out of this, so not to be afraid. And I always thought there's going to be a bigger picture of I didn't quite realize it would be something like talking to people, but I have had a lot of people who reached out, even in Dubai, via social media, because we kind of did a video that went viral, with a lot of questions. And I felt like if I'm able to bring a small amount of comfort to somebody, as somebody who's walked in those steps, then, it's, I won't complain. Yamini asks, how did people around us react? Your neighbors, relatives, react to your husband being a COVID patient? How did you deal with that? Right, so we met a lot of people reached out to him and to me. I would say there's a lot of worry, a lot of uncertainty. There's a little bit of fear. There was a lot of very valid questions. How contagious are you? How do you know that you'll ever get rid of it? How do you know, how long is it going to take for you to recover? There were so many questions, but like a lot of people, we don't have all the answers. So I kind of had to keep managing everyone's expectations. And luckily, they were able to see that Shane and me were such two different sides of the same disease. And that it doesn't always wear the same clothing when you're confronted with it. So they could be positive. And I kept telling them that. I said, just imagine that you are positive right now, because you don't know. You've not had a test. But the likelihood is that we all have carried it or have been touched by it. We've not had the symptoms, because not everybody shows the symptoms unless you have some kind of an underlying compromised immunity. So your body then has to fight that much more. But most likely we all will have it and pass it through. Do you think that once the COVID-19 issue ends, Darshan asks, people will start to socially exclude the ex-COVID infected patients? Unless you are psychic, I don't think you know who's had it and who hasn't. And even then, because I don't think even doctors would be able to tell you if you've had it or you haven't had it. I'm standing in front of everybody and telling you that, yes, I've tested positive. I know a lot of people who have tested positive and haven't told anyone. And, the reality of it is that we will all have it. It's not leprosy. It's nothing to be stigmatized about. I think that's quite a small-minded way of thinking about it. And if somebody doesn't want to talk to me, then I think that's a fair choice. Yeah, Psychic, yeah, exactly. You know about the Tiger King. It's a train smash that you can't look away from. Sandeep wants to know a single takeaway that you can share that's good to follow in our lives going forward. Wow, I don't want to come across as some guru about this, but I would definitely say to look after yourself. This is a chance and a time that we have been given as a gift to really slow down and focus on us. So this is a time to eat well, sleep as much as you want, because before you know it, we'll be back in the real world going at 100 miles an hour, and we don't want to have that regret of not looking after ourselves. It's time to cook, eat well, and just be happy. Just if you're with family, just really cherish this, because I think it's easy for me to say, but I really hope that people take that away from this, is that be present in the now. We don't know what the world is going to look like on the other side of this. We don't know how we're going to come out of this. So there's no point in sitting there and worrying about that and being anxious. We all we know is we can control the now, and every small step matters. And I think dressing up in the morning is a good sign. You can stay in your pajamas for so many days, but after that, it's really important to have that balance, to feed your mind good things, exercise. There's really no excuses for a lot of things now. We have the time. Thank you, Shah. Most people are panic stricken. I'm sure there's a certain stigma and fear because of lack of proper knowledge. Yeah, there is. And I think that fear comes from lack of control. You feel like you don't know enough. You feel like you want to know more. But I also feel like the more you listen to the news, the less you feel like you know. So I think we should all just, limit the amount of news that comes in, limit the source of the news, go to a good source and listen to that maybe once or twice a day to be updated. But listening to the same thing, wild theories, all these WhatsApp messages that tell you that the cure is found in different things, is not evidence based. Jay says, how was the support of your family? Oh my goodness, my husband's and my family have been amazing. They've been a real rock for us. Constantly on the phone, checking on us, giving us our space, and being really positive. They never let me, they never really let us or me feel like I was alone, even though I was alone. And sorry, family have been amazing, truly, truly blessed. How did the illness affect me psychologically? Paul asks is this something that the illness helped me become? I don't think it helped me become. Some of us, I think, don't know how strong you are until you're faced with a lot of things. And then you also have a lot of time to think about things. So, I think it's how you use this time. I felt like so much of it was out of my control. So, what's the point? Shane's fighting it in a different way in hospital, and I was fighting it in a different way at home. So there was really a lot of lack of control, but what I could control made me happy, and that's what I did. I think, your mental health is a lot of times in your hands. Paul, thanks for your recommendations of the movies. We've got 3 kids, and so I'm a Kung Fu Panda expert, and also I love Despicable Me. So those are great movies. And you're right, it's all about lifting your spirits, feeling like a child again, really connecting to all the things that you want to do. Don't judge others. And, if it makes you happy, that's what you should be doing. That, I think, should be a mantra. This makes me happy. This brings me joy. Go with that, and so really you won't be able to fail. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I think Shane's going to come on now. I really enjoyed being here, and thank you for all the questions and all the good wishes. And I wish that you all stay healthy, that you all stay well, and stay safe. And another thing is, don't say you're in quarantine. Say you choose to be keep yourself safe, and that's why you're indoors. It really helps to change the way you speak. Take care.
Okay, we're online here. Just having a little technical issue, so stand by for 2 seconds. My apologies. Okay, so let us just stand by. So it's live now, babe. It's live now. I'm just trying to get all the comments. Just trying to get the comments up now. Ask the volunteers. So, trying to find. Okay, is it live now? I can't seem to find the comments now.
It's fine, it's on the right, but you're live.
Okay, all right. Just having a technical issue here because my computer wouldn't, it had a camera problem, so just stand by for 2 minutes till I can find the comments. But to begin with, as some of you have probably been online from the start, Sue had no symptoms, and I was totally floored. I was knocked down to basically a bedridden mess for 2 weeks when this thing got me. It really hit me hard. It started with just a very basic felt like a cold. I just felt a little bit under the weather, nothing much at all. And then after a day or so, after about 24 hours, this thing really hit me. That's when the fever started. It came on as a lot of fever, a lot of body ache and headache. And by this stage, I hadn't developed a cough, or I didn't have the runny nose or the diarrhea. And then after that, it was on the Sunday I started feeling pretty bad. By the Monday I started feeling really bad. And then the Tuesday, I'd been in bed for 2 days, and by this stage, I decided to go to the doctors. I went to the clinic around the corner from home, and at this stage, I didn't know I'd had contact with the coronavirus, nor had I travelled to any of the listed countries. So we went in and I said, look, these are the symptoms, but they didn't test me for the coronavirus. They only tested me for influenza A and B and a few other tests or whatever it was. So I was basically sent home an hour later, take some paracetamol, get some bed rest, and stay hydrated. So that was the Tuesday. The Wednesday I was a mess. Wednesday I was really bad and just bedridden all day. I didn't even get out of bed, only to go to the bathroom. But by this stage it was like, look, we'd promised our kids to go camping. So I'd sort of said, look, the doctors told me I'm not contagious with anything at all, not a flu, not a cold, whatever. So loaded up on paracetamol and we went camping. And that was on the Thursday, yeah. So Thursday night into the Friday, we were away camping. I wasn't feeling too bad. And then the Friday afternoon, we got some weather reports saying the weather was going to go really bad, so we left early, left to come home. And then got home Friday evening. I went to bed about 9 p.m. and it was only by 4 o'clock the next afternoon. And in my own personal way, I sort of categorize having this thing as it goes in 3 stages. So the first stage is just the cold-like symptoms, very basic, not a lot. And then the second stage is when you really start to develop the fever and the body ache and everything like that. And then this was when I'd progressed into my own personal, thing of stage 3. And that's when the cough had really started. So this is when it had gotten into my lungs. There was diarrhea, a lot of fever still, no energy at all. I had no appetite at all. And I'm a pretty big guy, I'm a pretty solid guy, and I was lucky to be eating 1 mandarin a day. So by this stage, I was absolutely floored. And Sue had gotten me out of bed and said, "Come on, we'll go back to the clinic." And we'd found out we'd had contact with somebody who tested positive. So we went back to the clinic. We'd phoned them first and then went back to the clinic. They knew we were coming. They knew that there was a possibility that we were positive. So they were ready for us, took us straight to an isolated room. And the doctors and the nurses were, fully covered in all the protective gear and things like that. They did the tests. They put me on a drip to get me hydrated, but also with paracetamol to help control the fever and the body pain. That was the Friday evening. We got the call from the government medical representative the next afternoon and said, "Look, you're positive. We're going to try and put you into hospital." And the enormity of it all hadn't really sunk in, and I was, one of these people that was sort of like, okay, yeah, I'll be fine. Life goes on. I'll stay in bed for a few more days and just ride it out. This guy was quite adamant that I go to hospital. And again, I was sort of like, look, I'm pretty young, I'm pretty healthy. I think there's a lot more people out there who need that bed more than me. So a day and a half later, they finally found me a hospital bed, the Mediclinic Parkview here in Dubai, which was an amazing facility, very new, amazing staff, very dedicated. And off I went. The next 4.5 days, absolute mess. Absolutely destroyed. And over the period of that time, a lot of tests were done. There was a lot of blood taken. I had the cannula in my hand, so they were giving me paracetamol every 6 or 8 hours. I was on fluids, IV fluids, and vitamins. Plus, they were giving me a vitamin D injection every morning in my hip. They would come and take an X-ray. They'd take blood samples. They'd take COVID swabs. But for the first 4 or 5 days, and this was only after I'd started coming good, the doctor had said to me, they were really worried, and we're almost at the point they would have to elevate me to the next status as being under a constant watch and being put into ICU and intubated. Now, this was caused by a multitude of factors which I don't understand completely because I've never studied medicine, but one of them was my CRP levels, which is your C-reactive protein, which is an indicator for inflammation within your body. Now, from what I understand, and again, this is just my very uneducated understanding of it, was that your regular levels are 0 to 5. Now, my levels topped out at 120. Off the back of that, I'd also developed pneumonia. And then one of the mornings they wheeled me down to do a CT scan on my lungs, and that come back in a worrying report that the doctor came in and said, "Look, your lungs are totally consumed, totally 100% consumed by both the coronavirus and the pneumonia." So I had a double fight on my hands there. And thirdly was, again, because my lungs weren't functioning properly, my O2 saturation levels in my blood, my oxygen levels in my blood were not doing too well. So I sort of had 3 strikes, and I guess with an underlying health, I try and train sort of 5-6 days a week. I do triathlons, I cycle a lot, I swim a lot, which I really enjoy. I sort of made a conscientious effort a few years ago to try and turn my life around to a bit more of a healthy lifestyle. I think that did play a big part in it. Now, Paul's asked a question here. Would you say credit goes to timely medical attendance offered by the government and hospitals? Paul, 100%. You can't ever discount the medical attention we were given and what doctors and nurses do across the board, not just for this virus and this disease that's currently put the world into total shutdown, but everything they do, and they work long hours, they're on their feet. You've got to think of their mental capacity as well. A lot of the time seeing patients that aren't well, it's got to have a negative effect. So Psycat, any advices for people who are considering getting tested? Should we wait for symptoms to amplify? Personally, it's a tough one, because what I understand of it, a lot of medical centres are heavily struggling with positive cases, with people with the symptoms. Now, it's scary and worrying when you look at a case like my wife, Sue, who still has no symptoms, has presented positive, not a cough, not a fever, nothing, and would never have known. And, let's say we weren't in this full isolation lockdown like we are here in Dubai and in other countries, you could be passing it on. But, have you had contact with people? Have you travelled? Or you're just concerned about the virus and want to get tested? I think, personally, again, this is just personal opinion, that you shouldn't need to if you haven't had any known contact with people, but also just manage yourself, stay hydrated, eat well. Even if you are in some sort of lockdown, keep trying to move, try and exercise. Even when I was in hospital, once I started coming good, I would walk up and down the hospital room. I'd do a couple of squats, a couple of push-ups, which wasn't very pleasant when I had a cannula you got the scar there. I had a cannula in my hand, so trying to do push-ups was an interesting one. And I was sort of told by a lot of people, look, settle down. But it just got the blood flowing a little bit. Kriti, thank you. To be honest, hey, sometimes it's better to give this thing a voice. We're dealing with it in our way. I put a post whilst I was in hospital on just on my Facebook platform, purely because I was a little bit upset and frustrated from people, friends and family locally, and I'm Australian. In Australia, and a lot of good friends in the UK, because I lived in the UK. And I think they just weren't taking it as serious as this thing really is. And personally, I wasn't until I got it. You don't really understand it. And I did this Facebook post to say to people, look, now that you know somebody who's got it, who is absolutely flawed and absolutely wiped out here, take it serious. Stay at home. Really, really limit your movements. And that initial Facebook post, it's gone to something like 37,000 views, which is absolutely mind-blowing. And I've had messages and a lot of messages via social media or WhatsApp and things like that of people just that I've never met before, just globally saying, wow, thank you for sharing this. It really puts it into perspective. Psycat again. How did I get over the initial scare? Your experience sounds really traumatic. You're a brave man and come out strong. Any advices for the ones who don't have my fitness levels? To begin with, there was no initial scare because, again, at this point, I was pretty well wiped out, but I don't think I'd embraced the reality of what this thing was. So, and I don't want to scaremonger, I don't want to sensationalize or over dramatize what this thing is and what it can do to you. But it is brutal, absolutely brutal. I think, if there's any advice that, I wouldn't like to say I'm somebody who knows a lot about anything, to be honest, but personally, eat healthy, stay healthy, try and just get a little bit of exercise most days of the week if you can, even if it means walking up and down the corridor if you live in an apartment block or in your house. If you can go into a courtyard, then fine, great. That would be my underlying bit of advice, is to, if you don't live a healthy life, or you could definitely understand and identify areas where you could just smarten up your act a little bit, then go for it. Smoking, I'm lucky I don't smoke. And I know that people that do smoke really have a fight against it. Paul, what are you saying here? A person who's recovering, speaking to people is really influences with courage. It's great that you're doing this, narrating your journey, even if it's not a pleasant experience. This radiates a lot of confidence into us. Very kind, and thank you. As Sue had said, I think you've been online from the start. Some people have dealt with this in a very private matter. It wasn't our goal to really go global with this thing, saying, hey, look at us, wow, we've got it and we're survivors. But to put this thing into perspective, to give it a voice, it definitely has helped people. It's made people realize how brutal this thing is, but it's also made people understand, look, this thing is real and it's nasty. Yamini, sorry, I'm on my phone here, so I'm just trying to get the messages. Do you think the fact you're physically very fit, thank you, very kind, had a role in my recovery? Yes, 100%. I do think that I've got a pretty good immune system as well. And to talk about my immunity, strangely enough, I've been suffering because I swim a lot and I'm in the water. We're lucky, we live very, very close to the beach and we've got a pool at home, and I swim with a swim squad in a pool, and I swim with a triathlon group sometimes twice a week. I was suffering from what I originally was diagnosed as a middle ear infection here in my left ear, where the water was getting in and sort of getting in around my eardrum and giving me a lot of problems. Fast forward a few months, and I travel a lot with work, sometimes 2 and 3 times a week, so I was on and off planes all the time and really suffering with the pain of the air pressure when we were going up and coming down. I finally went to another ENT, and he had told me it wasn't a middle ear infection. My ear canal was actually closing because of all the swimming. It's a natural reaction of your body. And he'd given me a course of I'd been on antibiotics. So that in itself has probably knocked down part of my good white blood cells and my immunity there. But he'd given me a course of steroids over 5 days. And that, I believe the doctors have said, could have been a contributing factor to effectively having a back door where this coronavirus could have gone in, and my immunity was knocked down because of that, even though I was still very active, very fit and very healthy. So yeah. Harry, what were the symptoms you had? The original symptoms, sorry if I'm repeating this to some people, I'm just keeping up with the questions here. The original symptoms were just a basic cold. I just felt a bit average, a bit through here, nothing more. And that was on the Sunday a few weeks ago. And I'd been out riding my mountain bike about an hour away from here in Dubai. And I'd had a crash on my bike, a pretty embarrassing crash, to be honest. I was with the kids, and I took a big thump, landed on my back and my head. And a few hours later, I initially thought, hey, you're not acute anymore, and you've just given your body a bit of a hit, a bit of a shock, and that was its reaction. Fast forward 24 hours, then, I was in a world of hurt. I had a lot of fever, and I'd carried that fever for over 2 weeks of 39 degrees and higher. So the body ache had come on, a lot of neck ache in here, and headache, really, really severe headache. Then it went into chest and lungs and things like that as it progressed. Really struggling to breathe, struggling to talk, and I'd go into these fits of coughing where it was guttural. It was coming from deep in here because my Is it rare for people to recover from corona? No, I think majority of people do recover. A lot more people do recover from it. And from what I understand, there's varying factors of the intensity of this virus. So most people do recover. Unfortunately, some don't. And sadly, a very good friend of mine passed away yesterday morning from it. He had a lot of complications. What is the first thing you're looking forward to after isolation? That's a very good question. We live a comfortable life here. We're very lucky. We've got a very comfortable sized house. We've got a pool and a garden. So, I'm not very limited in the activities. And like Sue had said earlier on, we've got 3 kids, 3 nearly 10-year-old triplets. So we're very active with them. We're out washing the car today. I set up my bike on a stationary trainer, so I can still do a lot of the things. Maybe to go out for dinner. And back to when I was in hospital, and my wife will probably give me a thump for this, but I'd somewhat embraced that isolation. Having 3 kids, I own 2 businesses. We live a very, very active lifestyle. I try and train 5-6 days a week, and I'm out the door most mornings by 5:30. So this downtime has been amazing for me personally. I've had hypertension for many, many years, high blood pressure, which I take medicine for every day. Now, I've not taken my medicine for over 2 weeks now, and my blood pressure has been absolutely perfect. 120/80 plus minus a few points. So I'm enjoying the downtime, and I don't have the stress levels of trying to keep up with all my stuff and all the projects and all the emails and everything like that. Of course, I've now got other stresses where I'm not knowing how and when we're going to be able to get back working again. Kriti, I'm quite heavily tattooed, all my back and everything like that. Ritika, I apologize if I got your name wrong. I'm quite prone to allergies. Small bout of cough is scary. When do you think I should get tested? Again, this is just a personal opinion of somebody with no medical training at all. I think you need to understand, if you're very prone to allergies, is a common reaction from your allergies if you've been exposed to one of these things, whether it be a cat, dog, dust, anything you eat, is your reaction to cough. Again, you don't want to wait for this thing, but also you don't want to put the extra pressure and stress on yourself and also on the medical system. Monitor it, watch yourself if you start getting fever, a cough, a lot of body pain, shortness of breath, diarrhea. Some have a runny nose. I never had a runny nose from the beginning with it. So yeah, Psycat, thank you. It's been a pretty tough 24 hours. Who we got? Ananta. Again, my apologies if I'm pronouncing names wrong here. Just trying to open the rest of your message. Thank you for sharing. Very kind of you. What was my initial thought that came into my mind when you realized this? Not a lot, to be honest. Not a lot. I wasn't shocked. Again, it sort of leads back to the fact that I didn't know, or I knew one person with it, but I didn't know what they were going through, and I'd somewhat kept a distance from a lot of media about what it was like. So in a way, I sort of had some ignorance or arrogance to it that I'd just not really looked into it. And I think also a lot of people think, oh, well, you're young, you've got a cough, you're wiped out for a few days, done, get on with it, life goes on. And it was mainly the old people that suffered. So in my own, I don't want to sound ignorant or arrogant here, but in my own headspace, it was like, look, I'm young, I'm pretty fit, I'm pretty healthy, so this thing can't do a lot to me. It was only after a few days, and this sort of answers your question as well, Poonam. How many days did you have the symptoms before I went to hospital? I had the symptoms from the Sunday night, and it was a week later I went to hospital after I'd been tested originally by the doctors, but at this time I didn't know I'd had any exposure to anybody with it. So they didn't test me for the COVID, they tested me for flu because, again, it's still officially flu season here in Dubai. Come back with a load of negative results from the test, but they didn't test me for COVID. And then it was the Friday. So I started with the basic cold-like symptoms on that was the Sunday. Friday I got tested, Saturday I found out. It was the Monday, I think. I didn't keep a log of when I went in. So yeah, the symptoms, they gradually get worse as this thing progresses. Paul, once recovered, was it difficult for you to cheer yourself up mentally? Sorry, I'm just trying to open this on my phone. I was very mentally well off throughout. I definitely have a positive outlook on life a lot of the time anyway. Through a multitude of factors that I'm very lucky to have in my life. I find generically and just in general that the training I do lets me get out of my head space. So just to go for a cycle or a swim or a run or even just a body weight workout I can do out in the front garden, push-ups, sit-ups, things like that. I find that the endorphins I get from that do keep my head a lot clearer. So that also goes on to Ritika's question here. How important is mental well-being during this? It's massively important. And I never let it get into my head. And I think, again, having that underlying fitness, my body never let me know to the point how bad I really was. Now, statistically, and it somewhat contradicts how I was feeling, the doctor had said I was borderline being put into ICU and intubated and things like that. So in my head and in my body, and without trying to dramatize this thing, I don't want to sort of make it something that more than it was. I never felt like I was on the level. I never felt like I was on the edge, and it never felt like it had hold of me, and it took me to some very deep, dark black holes. And it's mechanical, this thing, if to put it in a way. It really is mechanical. It drags you down and it absolutely thumps you. But it goes in waves. It goes in 8-hour waves, as and when the medicines kick in. And then I'll go from, as the medicines, just before I've got a new dose put in, because I was on IV meds plus oral meds. Before I'd get that, my fever would have a hold of me and I'd be absolutely freezing. And I'd be wiped out. They'd give me the paracetamol and a few of the other meds, and about 30 minutes later the sweats would start. And when I was in the worst state I was in, the putrid stench coming from the sweat, and I'd have to ask to change the bed twice a day because I would sweat so badly for about an hour while I was laying there, just absolutely floored, absolutely wiped out. Then I'd come good for a while, and I'd have a 3-hour window to try and eat. And at this stage, don't forget, I went for probably 9 or 10 days. I lost 7 kilos. I wasn't eating. I was barely eating. I struggled. I think the first thing I really ate in hospital was half a slice of white bread with jam. And leading into going to hospital, I'd barely eaten at all at home. I was eating maybe an apple and a mandarin a day. And I've spoken to a few people that have had this, and they were the same. They would eat a little bit of fruit. And I spoke to a friend last night who, strangely, he said bread with jam, which is crazy. Harry, my friend is having a 104 fever and cough since the last 5 days. What is the possibility of him having corona? It's highly likely. Could be just a flu. Could be a multitude of things. Do they have a cough? Do they have a lot of body ache and headache? But fever and things like that, that's a high fever as well, I think. Let me just look at what that is, because I use, we're in Celsius centigrade here. How did I keep myself positive? Rajnakanth. what was going on in your mind in hospital? To be honest, I embraced the time off. I embraced the solitude, and as I said earlier, I'll probably get a beating from my wife, but a positive headspace, you know. I just embraced it. I enjoyed the time off. I enjoyed the solitude, the quietness. I spoke to the kids every day, and we got Zoom. And when it went public that we put a video on Facebook, I made a conscientious effort to try and reply to everybody who'd contacted me personally through social media channels, through WhatsApp, through Facebook Messenger and Instagram, people that I sort of knew. There was, I think, a few thousand messages of well wishes on the Facebook post I did, which I didn't reply to, but I tried really hard to reply to everybody's messages who were getting in touch with me. So it was that kept me really busy. Of course, we had Netflix, which, to be honest, I struggled to find anything. I rarely watch television anyway. I sort of watch a bit of rubbish on my phone every now and then. Something will pop up, but on a whole, I rarely sit down to watch television. Even now at home, I might watch a cooking show with Sue, with my wife. Things like that. How would I explain my time in the hospital? It was a healing process. It was a massive thing for me, again in my life, to really appreciate doctors and nurses. They really are the superheroes, and not just doctors and nurses. They're on the front line. You know, they're very exposed to it. And they work long hours, long days, globally. And that's globally. That's just not, you know, the doctors and nurses that were with us. Sorry. My wife has just piped up saying she loved the solitude too, of me being away. All the staff, almost the staff that you don't see, you know, the people that are still collecting our garbage bins out here. For people that work in the supermarkets, I'd hate to use the term the faceless people, but it's the ones that just go about their business every day. There's no real glory in their jobs. And it was a time of reflecting and appreciation for these people. And many years ago, Sue and I, when our babies were born, they were born very premature. And one of our babies, Xander, our son, he had a blood infection and his whole blood system crashed. So over the period of a week, it was, you know, they were born at 30 weeks. So again, seeing what these doctors and nurses do on a daily basis, you know, you have to sit back and really appreciate these people. So yeah, it was a time for reflection and time for healing, and just a time for me to do what my body needed to do. Harry, is there any special care that has to be taken apart from the treatment? There is, and I've been in a little bit of, I've had a few stern words, is the fact that my lungs were so heavily consumed by both pneumonia and the coronavirus. They took an absolute hammering, and I've gotten back, and even when I was still in hospital, I started trying to do a little bit of exercise, and one morning I wouldn't say I ran, it was a very slow jog, but I ran around the hospital room for 15 minutes. Another day I did a load of, you know, just bodywork stuff, squats, push-ups, sit-ups, things like that. And then since I've been home, we've got a pool in our garden. I've strapped a couple of leashes to one of the big plant pots, and I tie them around my ankles, and I swim. And our three kids, Paul, Xander, Zara, and Zoe, they all swim a lot. So we all get in the pool and we'll do a swim set for sort of 25 minutes, 30 minutes. You know, our kids swim competitively, and they swim for their school and a club here. So I do that to keep busy. But yeah, I do have to limit what I can do with how much exertion I put on my body, especially making my heart rate get too high, my lungs work too hard. So it's, other than that, I'm 100% fine now. I don't have to take any meds, any antivirals, antibiotics, things like that. You know, I gratefully come out of the hospital in a very in a very good way. I'd lost some weight, which was good. Lost a bit of muscle mass, which isn't great for if I was to try and get back into training. But I've slowly done that. I've got a stationary bike here at home, so I cycled last night, watching a surfing program. So other than that, it's just a case of making life as safe and as normal as possible for all those here in our house. Keeping the kids occupied and entertained and off their iPads. And, they come and we get up in the mornings and we'll do a little bit of training at home in the mornings, and we do the schoolwork. And I've still got my work to do. We've got a few inquiries coming in. So, what's this question, Ritika? What all do you have to follow once back home? Just the isolation side of things. Again, keeping things neat, clean, and tidy. Other than that, I returned three negative tests before they let me out of hospital. So it was 24 hours between each test, and it had to be 3 consecutive tests, as I understand it. In Dubai, you can't really do a great lot, but should you get a permit to go out, of course you have to have a mask and gloves and things like that, and practice the social distancing of 2 meters. If you need to go to a supermarket or a pharmacy or one of those other essential places, you can get a permit to go out. So other than that, I think the only thing now that I want to try and do is I've been in touch with not just the doctor who was treating me, but another doctor who is, but he's not a GP or a doctor in the hospital. I think he deals with genetics and stuff. I want to try and be able to donate plasma, because I believe the antibodies I've developed after going through this could and would be helpful for people who are in ICU, older people with underlying health issues. So I'm really trying to get more answers and find out if and when I can go and donate plasma, which again leads back to our little guy Xander when he was, 6 days old, having to get plasma and platelet transfusions. It's something, it's very dear to Sue and I that we try and donate blood every year. So yeah. Ritika asks again, is there a scope of relapse with corona? We really don't know. And I guess I think you could even ask that to a multitude of doctors who are studying this thing, and they probably don't even have an answer yet. You would assume so, because of the way the flu comes around every winter, or every flu season as they call it. And it's very worrying. Is there a vaccine? I believe they're trying to develop them, and through the massive amounts of social media we're bombarded with, you hear steam this, do that, drink this, eat that. Until we officially know that there is a vaccine, then I guess the world as we know it is going to be like this for now. Paul soon said she tried watching Tiger King. I tried watching it, and I managed to do 2 episodes. It was, sorry, but again, look, I don't watch a lot of television to begin with. Maybe some cooking shows or a few documentaries I'll sit down and watch. But it was an abuse on my very, very low levels of intelligence. I just couldn't do it. It didn't get into me. Is there anything I was watching? I did start watching something on Amazon Prime. Can't even think of the name of it. One of these action ones. The guy's a CIA agent, and off he goes to these far-flung countries. 700 people shooting at him, and he doesn't get shot, and he manages to get every one of them with one gun. Load of action rubbish, but other than that, just maybe a few documentaries. Bhagwan, do you think we can help the medical community in any way? They are the real heroes. I think by showing your thanks, first and foremost, just on social media. Now, I don't know how much. I'm assuming you're in India here, so forgive me if I'm incorrect there for my assumption. But I don't know how much you're seeing of social media in the UK, but there's been a massive push with a lot of people either posting themselves in a blue t-shirt or something blue, or a blue car, with the hashtag for the NHS, for the doctors and the nurses and all the other staff that work in there, as a show of appreciation. That in itself, I think, highlights what these people are. But, you know, through a lot of media channels, you also understand that they aren't paid very well. They work very long, thankless hours on the front line of death and disease. You know, it's great for them to see a patient like myself be able to walk out of the hospital, and it's a success story. But they also have to deal with a patient that doesn't walk out of hospital. And you've got to think of the mental aspect of these people that have to see that every day. You know, some of them have to deal with families coming in with young children with broken limbs and things like that. They have to deal with, I don't know, I think the first thing we can do for medical staff and everybody in that industry is just a show of thanks, a real big show of thanks. And I took photos of all the nurses and the doctor that came into my room and did a collage of it and put it on my social media as a show of thanks. You know, these are the people that are the superheroes. They don't have a cape on and, you know, wear their underpants over their tights. But, yeah. Amit, I don't know. I hope not. I really hope not for everybody's sake. I did a little video of leaving hospital the other day, and the last thing I said was, it was an interesting 2 weeks, and it was 2 weeks I don't ever want to experience again. It was brutal, and you know, like I said, you know, I lost a friend to this brutal virus yesterday. He was a bit older. Now, it took me to some deep, dark black holes that you don't want to experience. So, you know, practice your social distancing, ramp up your cleaning. You know, as Sue had mentioned earlier on, if you heard, wash your hands, keep things neat and clean and tidy, things like that. Harry, do I look at life and the world through a different lens after Corona? Good question. Yes and no. I take life as it comes. I don't have a faith, whereas my wife is deeply into faith and religion. I'm much more about science and facts and things like that, but that's just a personal belief. And life is very precious, definitely. You know, and we're very, very lucky, and some will say we're very blessed to have 3 happy, healthy children. And you know, I've got a business that provides for us very well. All my family and friends, you know, all of our families, our parents, and that are safe and well. So, you know, I'm always grateful. I'm always thankful. You know, Sue will probably say, you know, I'm sometimes upset. I get angry, or I get just a little bit frustrated when you want more, or you might want. But a lot of that's just materialistic crap at the end of the day. And I think we're starting to realise that the materialistic side of things, I hope we all come out of this and we re-enter society in a better way, and we make this world a better place. I think that's something, it's very easily said. Will we action it? Will I action it? Will all my friends and family action it? I don't know. I hope we do. I hope we don't forget the lessons we've learned from this thing and things like that. So it's I think we've still got a long way to know what this thing really is, what it's capable of. Like I said earlier, it's mechanical. It's very, very, very mechanical. I would almost liken it to something that's been designed. But again, that's just me. That doesn't come from anything factual. It's just from my experience of what I've dealt with. So anyway, I think I've babbled on for a lot longer than they expected. apologies if I missed some of your questions. Others, I hope I've answered your questions and given you some insight from somebody who's gone through the machine, as they say. I hope I haven't put any fear into you. But I would say just respect this thing and stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we can come out of this as a better human race, you know. Let's be human. I think we've some of us have forgotten how to be human in a lot of ways. We've become so consumed by social media and commercialism and things like that. And I put my hand up to that massively. That, you know, the materialistic way of life that we've all, well, I won't say all because that's assuming and that's being very presumptuous. The way of life some of us have fallen into needs to be addressed, and my hand goes up for that. So anyway, thank you so much to the Aster volunteers for giving Suman and I this time to put our story out there, our situation. And yeah, stay safe, stay well. Thank you very much. Take care.